Hello. Ooh. Hey, witches. Welcome to SASS Mass. It's our first Sunday of every month where we invite our whole community in our courtyard space to join in. And yeah, we're excited to be here to kick off 2025 with a SASS. Um, and I'm going to post our terms of engagement in the chat. So for those of you participating, can check that out. Um, and think like witchy chats around a campfire. We're here to kind of share perspectives. And again, if you want feedback, um, we can kind of weigh in. Uh, Topic changes are totally okay. So if we start a topic and like you want to switch topics, it's okay. Where most of us here identify as neurodivergent witches and we act accordingly. So there you go. So I'm going to take a moment, go off camera, post the terms. I'm also just going to make sure any witches looking to get in can. And so the floor is open to whoever wants to kick off the conversation. And again, you're free to be on or off camera, whatever you want. So who like to start us off? And as the questions come kind of rolling in, you can hand it off to the next person. But if you don't know who is next, that's why I'm here. And there are other mods here too. We can all help. So what's on your mind?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Look, I did it. Woo. Just wanted to make sure it worked.
Yay, your
Actually,
headphones hooked up?
yes,
Yay! All
I'll
right.
start actually. Because this is my first SASS Mass. So hi all. And I'm nervous too, and I'm not really sure why. It's kind of silly. I feel like it's the first day of school, and I'm like, are they gonna like me? Am I gonna have friends there? uh, um, well, my name's Chelsea. I'm located in Wyoming. It's a snowy day today. Um, but I'm okay with that because winter's for resting and I garden all summer. So I was thrilled to finally see some snow and feel like I could just unplug and relax. Um, I'm really excited to be here just to connect and have a space to visit and connect with like-minded people because it can be kind of alienating, um, especially here where I haven't really found any fellow witches. So I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you for being here and for being the first one to go. That's always the hardest. Danger rush. Like,
I just had to get it out.
how did you find us, if you don't mind me asking?
Um, Through my dietitian, actually. And
Oh,
she,
I bet I know who that is.
yes, so I was seeing her uh like a couple of months ago, and then we realized we were very similar creatures, and we were talking about this, and I wanted to get to a more like settled space with work and things so I could commit and feel like I had the time and space for this group. And kicking off the new year was my intention, was to get more in tune spiritually and make more time. So, but yeah, that's how I found you.
You know, I thought that this was your first, but you look familiar to me, which happens in these spaces a lot. A lot of people look
Sure.
familiar to me, which that people that I have never met. So I wasn't like 100% sure.
Yeah. Uh, isn't that such an interesting feeling? I
Yeah.
uh, I have that happen a lot with like with deja vu though, because I dream a lot. And sometimes I'm like, have I been here? Did I dream that? I don't know. It's just a really interesting feeling.
Yes, it is. Oh, and is it Rotten Dogma? Did I say that right?
Yes, you did. Um, yeah, that's my one of my online nicknames. Sort of a play on, well, Rottweilers are my breed of dog that I love. And I'm new here, my first time, so I'm feeling kind of nervous too. Very neurodivergent. So um anyway, hi. I know
Hi.
the deja vu feelings and the um have I been here before? What is my connection to this place? That people don't usually understand and think I'm kind of odd for.
Yep.
You're in good company here. I think we can all relate to that feeling. I think that people feel a lot of things, but due to their maybe religion or social conditioning, family conditioning, that you change your beliefs. But I think that we just, yeah, that's just my thought on it. I think a lot of people like do that, but it gets lost,
Suppressed.
suppressed. Yeah, all the words. Ezra Silver.
Yeah, I just figured since I got like a ping when we were talking about neurodivergence, and it made me think about like just how like cool it is that we have like such a space that um like for specifically neurodivergent witchy people. Because it really like hits me kind of like over and over again sometimes how those two how much those two are linked. And like I heard somebody talking about it a while back, about like kind of a canary in a coal mine situation where and they also called them like indicator species. They were talking about like in animals, where as sensitive people, neurodivergent people are often the most likely to feel the effects of whatever bad thing is happening first. And also, like, I think a little bit of that kind of like justice seeking and maybe even some like PDA stuff that just makes us have to say it when the thing is happening, or else like our brain can't be settled. We're like, no, hey, the thing is happening. Why is everyone just pretending this thing is not happening? And that ends up creating this kind of the scapegoat, like black sheep situation um that a lot of witches like come to relate to. Because like so many other people, and I agree with Maria, um, I feel like it's probably not so much about um them being unable to feel it. Like I have like there's probably different levels of sensitivity, but there's also different levels of masking. And as somebody who was like so high masking for most of my life, I like wasn't the person who would point it out like point things out in public, because I learned like through like basically being a theater person, like what like I manually learned the rules of like what was acceptable and like what was going to make me have friends and that kind of thing. I just still didn't end up like making very many of them though. But like unless they were also neurodivergent and they like saw me. Um and there were and I definitely had like a justice seeking version of it, and I think we often are, we're like the ones that are like screaming, hey, does anyone notice that like people are uh really sick because of like I don't know, the food or whatever, like the well is poisoned, that kind of thing, and like everybody, and then religion often and other forms of social conditioning are like teaching you that it's like rude to shout about the well being poisoned. And it's like it's I find it really interesting to see how many people are like stepping into their own and uh claiming their own diagnoses and groups like this where we're all coming together and saying, hey, um I really relate to this way of thinking. Sorry, my cat has distracted me. She wants to be played with. Um, uh, like my brain works this way, and for a long time, people did not like that, and now there's so many different spaces, like including this one, that are starting to come out and say, like, yes, we're more than happy if your brain works differently. And I also think it makes you I think thinking outside the box in those ways also is really complementary to magic as well. So
I definitely experienced a lot of backlash for speaking up about health concerns, environmental concerns. Um, for 20 years, I've been picky, at least 20 years, about what food my animals eat and what goes in it. And um, I tend to end up coming across bossy, but I think it's partly neurodivergence, not just that I'm bossy and mean. But I've been calling those things out, and it's just people ignore it or think it's, I think they don't want to face it. Um, but I definitely know what you mean about trying to mask to find friends, but then that didn't even work. And it's very lonely, but it is great to have these spaces available now that I don't feel like I'm quite as weird.
Hi, I think I'm next. Yeah, it's like, so what comes up for me, like when talking about like the food thing, is so my trauma responses and conditioning can go to like perfectionism. And so like I know that the food sucks, but yet like I have to kind of balance what I can realistically do because otherwise like I'll go to the extreme and like of it, right? And so like I just kind of acknowledging that's what comes up for me is like so I recognize that that's part of what comes up for me and that it does bring up like anxiety and my flavor of anxiety runs in the OCD realm. And so which like is interesting with my partner, especially like around food and stuff. And but we do have like conversations about it. And I know sometimes my like behavior to others might seem like annoying because of like the extra measures I would like to take in like food preparation that maybe other people like wouldn't. So it's an interesting conversation, especially with my partner because he's the one that I live with. Um, and so, but yeah, and that's been part of like my journey up and my shadow work like process um and yes, that's definitely like part of it. And my relationship like with control. So like that this like topic brings up like a lot for me, like with that. And I also realized too that like it, you know, with capitalist like society, like it's really sad that in order like to get the healthier things or like the things that don't have as much shit in it costs more money and then that's like hard too. Yeah, so like that all comes up for me. And there's something else I was going to say, but I forget. So I'm going to pass it to Stephanie and then I'll come back when I remember.
I love this conversation just so that even like so much of it resonates with me, like the food thing. Like I have some sort of like a cross contamination. It's probably got a name, but I don't know what it is. But I just run around and be like, "Don't let this touch that! Don't let! Oh my god, a touch! Throw the whole thing in the garbage. It's done. You can't have it anymore." And like the one time I threw a steak at my husband. Go figure. Um, now it's done. He's like, we can just wash it. No, we cannot. That steak is toast. So that reminded me of that story. We laugh about it now, but um and you brought up coming off as bossy, and that's a big thing for me. Like even on my report cards, talks too much and bossy, and that's just because um I can't. I got to cut through the fluff, and that's all it is, right? I don't make it super frilly a lot of times because it's not efficient for me, and so I don't want to do it, or I can't do it. Um, and Jen Marie sent me a TikTok once, or a meme or something, that like when someone's talking to you, don't you wish you could just hit skip intro, right? Like you do on the TV. Like, I don't need all of that. Like, I don't need the fluff, which makes me struggle with emails, right? Because I don't want to, hi, I hope your year is going well. And then, no, this is an email. This is what I think. So, but my point of all of this is that, especially because we have so many new people here, it's okay in here to let your freak flag fly, like we do. And I know that's really uncomfortable in the beginning. I was nervous speaking in here for a million years, and I still can get that way a few years later. But like, I just wanted to share those things about myself, like others are doing, to like let you know that like it's fine. We get it. Like, this is a space that all of that stuff is not only embraced but celebrated, right? Because there's value in all of that. So that is all I wanted to share. I'm going to mute. I don't see anybody else's hands up at the moment. Ezra Silver, go ahead.
Yeah. I wanted to say that Ocean mentioned something in the comments that was that people would tell them that they could be a lawyer, and like it was just a backhanded way of calling them bossy. And that was similar to me too. Like I would like I got from one teacher who really didn't like me, actually, that I could be the president. And I was just like, I was like glowing from that for a while. But it's like the same vibe, because like I wrote down like all my arguments, like that we were having like some kind of thing during class, and I just like wrote down what I thought was wrong about everyone's argument. And then when I was called on like last, I just like went, and this is how you were wrong, and this is how you were wrong. It's like I like pointing to all of them, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's and I'm similar to, I recognized myself in what Stephanie said about the fluff. Like when I was informed like just a couple years ago that using periods when you text makes you sound angry. Like, and I was like, oh, people have been thinking I'm angry so long. Like use like you, apparently people, a lot of yeah, I guess probably people my age, when they text, don't do all the like all the grammar stuff, but it's specifically the punctuation at the end, which makes it just seem very like hard, which I kind of get what they're saying in a feeling context. But I brought that up because I remember just so many texts that I would send where I would just like, my response was like, no, I do not want that, or something like that. And I would end up writing just like a bunch of stuff around it. Like I would write what my actual response was, and then I would actually write almost like sometimes a paragraph to try to get to the point without seeming like I was just saying something bluntly. And like how many like now I feel like I do appreciate small talk in certain contexts. Like it feels like almost like a game. Like, and if I frame it that way, I can have fun with it. I'm like, okay, this person needs a dance before we before we like get to like the nitty-gritty of the conversation, in order to feel comfortable. And I can almost feel like that's like an accommodation for them. And kind of like have fun with it. But for the most, like sometimes like I've said before, that I wish people were so honest with their emotions that they could just be like, eh, and you would know that they didn't like something and you could like move on. Like you wouldn't have to like do any, like you wouldn't have to have a whole conversation about like them explaining in detail why they didn't want to do that, and you being, and then like you, and then this kind of back and forth around it. Um and also, like, I really love musicals, and one of the reasons I enjoy that is because people will just sing a song about exactly how they feel, and that made my brain very happy. It was just like very neat, like just say exactly who you are and what you're feeling and like what your motivation is, and that like helps my brain go smoothly. um, yeah, let's see. Renee, Renee's iPad.
Yes. Well, I just found out, I guess I'm an angry texter because I am very conscious of my grammar. And there are periods and every other type of punctuation in all of my texts. But I was going to say, just also for the new witches, like, I feel like I get along really well with Stephanie and Ezra, and I am made of fluff. Like, there's like every kind of witch here. And like, I like a good story. Like, I like to tell one, I like to hear one. I am a fluffy person. But yeah, we all understand each other really well and appreciate those things about each other here. So that was all I wanted to chime in on. And is I'm not sure if it was Stephanie or Maria next. So Maria.
I think it's Stephanie. Yeah.
I think so. This conversation has gotten me to wondering, because I'm listening to the telepathy tapes that so many have been talking about lately, about the connection between nonverbal people with autism and the testing that they've done telepathically with somebody in their life, which is I'm only a little bit into, and it's fascinating. But in this group and groups of witches, like how much of our not needing fluff, and Renee, I love your fluff. Your stories are great and you always give me so much useful information. So it's not fluff to me. Um, how much of that is because we are operating on, I think, on more senses than maybe the muggles? Is that, I mean, maybe people who don't operate that way. Like how much of that just feels unnecessary and uncomfortable to us because we're tapped into so many other methods of relating and communicating to our fellow humans, that stuff feels like a waste of time. It's just a thought that I had. Maria, go ahead. That's all I had to say.
Yeah, I'm happy that you mentioned that, Stephanie, too. I just wanted to say I like appreciate grammar, and I didn't know any of that, Ezra, that you mentioned, and I guess I'm a what they call an elder millennial. I don't like that name, but I like Xennial. I was born in 1981, so I truly feel like I'm in an in-between space, which makes sense for my life. But the just like for grammar and like not having it for my flavor of like neurodivergent, it makes the paragraph way too confusing and I probably wouldn't read it. So I appreciate your grammar people because it tells me like where one thing stops and the next thing ends. So I don't know, but I hope no one thinks I'm angry. Also, because some of the witches sharing are on the support team with me at Bright and Dark, when I don't say hello and just start with the topic, it's nice to know that you don't care that I do that because I'm always like, say hello and ask how they're doing before you start like doing the information. So I'm happy to know that you don't care that I do that. And I do care how you're doing. It's just that like I'm ready to go. Like when we're meeting, like I've already got 50 thoughts in my brain and I'm just ready to like say them and I'm excited. So anyhow, um, Stephanie, though, like what you said is so interesting and I think it's a beautiful thing. And I know like maybe the rest of the world isn't like open to this, or there are people that are like not open to it and like want to put people more in boxes because they feel safe or some shit. But which safety is important, but like putting people in boxes, I don't think is a way to do it. And I think like I see a lot of those posts, um, like memes or videos of people saying, "Oh, I thought I was a witch or a vampire, or psychic, but I learned I was autistic," like those types, of things. And um, I just think like we're all a beautiful mesh of like our experiences. And then I think those of us that are open to more of like the psychic part, like that telepathy and other things, like I think that there's science, right? And I'm not like gonna say this perfectly, but that's okay. I think you'll get what I'm saying. Like there is science, like about how we use like different parts of our brains and things like that. So I do think that that's true. Then there was if any of you watched The Long Island Medium, Teresa Caputo, and then like, whether you like dig her or not, but she was hooked up to like an EEG or something machine. And the psychiatrist, and he's on TikTok too, and I forget his name, but he's always talking about the brain. They like actually watched her brain as she was doing connecting with the spirit, and he was like, yeah, you are using like different parts of your brain, and like you like, so it was really cool because like that's actually science now. Like people are actually like saying like, no, that's actually like science, and we have data now to like show that. But I think we're like a beautiful mesh of our lived experience, which comes with our trauma, which comes with how we like responded to that and interacted with that, and like how much of that have we kind of then interacted with and examined and as an adult, whether that be like therapy and shadow work and different things like that. And then yeah, like being a witch, I do feel like I straddle, I mean, the living and the dead, or like the spirit, and the physical, like however you want to say it. And as we've been talking of those of us who like have been here talking about engaging with like our bodies too, and like how that like plays a part, like working with our bodies and like the feelings, not because a lot of us I know like operate from an intellectualizing, like we're intellectualizing pretty much like everything. And I know a lot of you identify that as how I identify, but trying to get into my body and also making sure that they're part of the experience intentionally. That's all, Ezra.
Yeah, I love this conversation. I have also been seeing, actually, I just realized that last night I had a dream about the telepathy tapes, although I have not listened to them whatsoever yet. I've just been like seeing a lot about them. But I also came to this like I feel like telepathy is actually a special interest of mine. And a it's so interesting because uh like even just what I described before, where I kind of just like wish someone would just be able to like say, uh, like make just a sound and I would know exactly what they meant. Like there are times, especially with people that I'm very close to, that I get like a whole story or an image when like they make even just making a facial expression. And it happens a lot with my family. Like I live with my mom and my grandma. And so we're like in this little microcosm of like Russian doll situation. And as we get to know each other more in this context, because it's been about 2 years now, um, the more we end up just like saying things at the same time, or kind of just saying, oh yeah, the story about this, and then like the story doesn't need to be told because it was kind of already told in like a little flashback sequence to the last time it was told, like that kind of thing. And I am very interested to know more about the telepathy tapes. I had this kind of revelation, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, when I was thinking about doing podcasts, and like Ocean and I are gonna be doing podcasts and like interviewing people like within this group and stuff like that, and just trying to talk to as many witches and mystics and spiritual people as possible. But I had this idea of like podcasts being um, more like widespread and a little less professionalized, and just conversations with family members or people in your like community in town and that kind of stuff. Um, and then from the concept of like all things um, being one thing, I was kind of like, the only reason that we really have this idea of separation between us that makes me not be able to like, you know, um, understand the things about you that are happening in your brain are because we've kind of agreed that there is a separation there for your privacy and like for your like identity to exist separate from mine. And so like I feel like in cases of people who are less verbal, um, it makes so much sense to me that they would find other ways to communicate, that they would have a little bit more flexibility on those boundaries that separate us from like one person to another, especially with people that they're very close to, because you don't want to just like read the mind of like every person that's crossing the street. Um, but I think like there's been a couple of different times people here have told stories about like they meet someone and they just know something about them. Like sometimes like, and I'll do it without thinking, and it's one of those boundaries that I have to put up where it's just like I will meet someone and I'll I'll just kind of give an example. It will like be given to me. I'm like, like I'll just be talking and then I'll just say something like, or like uh if your dog was lost and your parents didn't make a very big deal about it, and so you're always like traumatized about the fact that they didn't go looking for your dog or something like that, right? And then because that example was like given to me, someone will be like, oh my God, that exact fucking thing happened to me when I was a kid. And uh it's like I didn't mean to do that, but it feels like that happens to me quite a lot. And I think that there's been a couple of different people here that like that relate for sure. And it probably happens in different ways for different people, as everything is. Like Maria said, as far as like neurotypes, like I think we're just realizing that people have a lot of different types of neurotypes. There's not just the one that is the most successful under capitalism. We actually have many different types, and that makes sense since we like from my perspective, we kind of live in like a giant brain, and different neurons do different things. Like they have different types and different tasks and stuff like that. Um, so it makes sense that there's people that are highly specialized or highly generalized or jump from thing to thing like ADHD people do and that kind of stuff. So, okay, I think I'm good. That's the end of my thought train, probably. Go ahead, Renee.
Oops. I think Ray had a weigh in real quick first. Or not real quick. I'm sorry, Ray. I think Ray has a weigh in, and then I can speak.
There we go. It will be a quick way in, actually. I was just gonna say that like yeah, you're talking about like this whole like separation uh separation like culture, like everybody's separated or whatever. And even at first, like when I was considering joining, that was what like put me off too, was being online, because that always just felt so separated to me. But this group is entirely different. Like it doesn't feel separated at all with this group. Like, and even like when I'm just checking in, on the app, like it's like, I don't know, like I can feel you guys all around, like even though we're all over the place, like it feels like you're all just like right there. So it's like it's a very different feeling than I expected it to be. So that was it.
Okay. So I had a couple of things to say that are related to what Maria and Ezra both said. So on the subject of mediums, again, like it might not be your jam. I love mediums, and I went to a paranormal conference several years ago, and there were a bunch of the ghost hunter guys, and Chip Coffee was there, and they all love Chip Coffee, and they're all just like Chip's the man, and they had actually done some sort of experiment where they had been filming Chip, and I don't know with what kind of camera, while he was using his abilities as a medium, and they said you could see like it was like a ray of light that went from Chip and like directly like touched other people, and they were all just like, listen, he's the real deal. Like, I don't know, it was heartwarming to me. And then kind of along the subject of that, I was going to say, I've heard this described other places, but there's kind of, and I feel like that's kind of what happens here too. There's kind of like a home field advantage, right? So I'm also like a big fan of Uri Geller, and I don't know if people know, he's the spoon bender, but he's a lot more complex than people love to try to show he's a fraud. But what I was going to say is some people that have known me here a long time know like I'm obsessed with, well, I mean, I would say I'm actually like a spiritualist. Like I do, you know, align a lot with the religion of spiritualism, and of course spiritualism is just fraught with a history of fraud, right? So back to the home team advantage, what I was going to say is, and this happened with Uri Geller, I think he's one that even spoke about it. So if you just think of it in terms of like a comedian, like a comedian can be delivering jokes to a very receptive audience, and when they're delivering, like when they're like on fire, like the receptive audience loves it, like, you know. But if the same comedian could tell the exact same jokes to like an unreceptive audience, it's all just going to fall flat, and it's just going to be, you know, excruciating for everyone involved. And I kind of feel like that's what happens with mediums and spiritualists too. It's when they're in like the proper environment and people are receptive to what they're doing, like I think it enhances what they do. And I think sometimes when you're just surrounded by skeptics, it just squashes, you know, can just squash what they're doing. So again, when I say skeptic or spiritualism is kind of has a lot of, you know, fraud in their history, there's also a lot of stories about someone being a very good medium, and but then when they have a bunch of people going, prove it, prove it, prove it, they felt so much pressure to prove it, they would fake it. Just so basically it was almost like a 50-50 thing. It's like, okay, if it's not going to come through, I still have to manifest something, so it's okay if I just fudge it a little bit. And so it's fascinating to me, it's just interesting. But I do think when witches are together, the energy is just good. Like I don't even think we feed off of each other, because I don't think that's the right, I think we amplify one another. And so I don't know if this all ties back, but I love mediums. Like I love them. Like I have the biggest spot in my heart for them. But I also can appreciate that like it's not always going to happen. Like I just don't think you can snap your fingers, and especially if it is part of our brain and we don't even know what that part of a brain is. Like how do you tap into that? You know, it's very complicated. Also another thing that gets mentioned here a lot is Matt Aaron and his book Psychic Witch, and how awesome it is. And just whenever I take one of his techniques out and like for a spin, like it's always really lovely and surprising. And I think Stephanie had actually mentioned a while ago the one where you're just psychic for a day, where you just approach the whole day, where you are like the most psychic person ever. And I took that one out for a spin one day, and it was overwhelming. Like, it was too much. It was pretty interesting, but um I don't know, hopefully that has some meaning for some people here. And I think Coral was up next.
Yo, witches. Um, okay, something you said right at the end. Oh, about somebody posted in the app, I think this Mumble Fairy, I think, posted it about 2025 being the year of like seeing and noticing magic. And yeah, like I don't know, you're just talking about your day of being like psychic or something. Like, yeah, maybe this year can just be the year we just notice more. And anyways, and then we're talking about different mediums and spiritualists. Um, it made me think about like something I have learned in my experience is that spiritualists or like spiritual gifts come through people in different ways, right? Like the message is going to get interpreted through that person and what they know and how they communicate. So, in the same way that you could go to a different doctor or therapist or whoever, and you're going to vibe with some of them and not with others. That's how I've started approaching people with spiritual gifts when they're sharing their gifts. Like there are going to be some who are interpret and say things in a way that I vibe with, and there's going to be some that I don't. And so like even if it doesn't resonate with me when somebody shares, I don't like necessarily think, oh, they're faking it, they're a fraud. It's just like, oh, well, this one just isn't for me. But like they are going to find their people who their message does resonate with. So I don't know. That's how I've started to interpret it. It's just like, well, there's a lot of people, like, not every doctor I go to is my doctor. So yeah, not every tarot card reader is my tarot card reader. Um, and then Maria said something about trying to like have her body like invite her body into the experience too, and sometimes that can be difficult to like connect with her body. And in the telepathy tapes, it actually they talk about that some of the kids don't know they're embodied. They don't know they have a body. And to me, like even though I am not like a nonverbal autistic person and the telepathy tapes aren't about me, it has been really validating because I'm neurodivergent, so I'm on the spectrum. And so, like, I don't experience telepathy to the level that they do, but I'm also more in this world than they are. Like, I do know I have a body, but um, that is true that, like, I also, while I know I have a body, sometimes it's hard to be in touch with it and remember, oh yeah, I need to feed my body. Oh, it needs to pee. Like, um, so yeah, I don't know. It was really validating to listen to the telepathy tapes because I'm like, oh yeah, like the spiritual things do exist, and some of us are going to experience them more, like these people who can communicate telepathically, but also maybe don't even know they're in a body. And I know I'm in a body, and I can kind of have these spiritual gifts and be. So I'm a little more in the middle of the two worlds than they are. Anyways, yeah, we all exist on a spectrum, and that was just kind of validating listening to that. Anyhow, I think that's all I have. I don't know who was next because I've been like detailing something and not looking at my screen a ton.
That's okay. Ezra is next.
Yeah, the thing that came through, I loved when Renee was saying that it's like being comedian. And I love comedy, and I took a comedy class at some point, and comedy is actually very similar to music, which is a vibrational like, thing. It's like all about timing. And so it makes a lot of sense that it would work like that. To me, since we're doing like vibrational, like frequency type of stuff. Um, Sorry, can you hear my partner is in the background talking? But let's see. Um, let's see. There is a comedian that I watched recently who I really like named uh, Rachel Bloom. And she did this, she wrote and performed in this show called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is a musical show. And she recently just did her first whatchamacallit, first special, like just comedy special. And I enjoyed it, but she's a skeptic, and she described this whole thing with a psychic medium where for over an hour this person was channeling her loved one, and that she was like, oh my god, I believe it, oh my god, I believe it. And then at the end the person said like one thing that was off, and she was like, oh, okay, never mind, none of this was real. And I was like, you just wrote the whole thing like over an hour off because there was one thing that like she subjectively didn't agree with. And I was just like, there are so many people that are really scared to believe in it. And I think the reason it bothered me obviously so much is because I was a skeptic for the majority of my life, like pretty much up until like I was 25, 26 years old, and would and I'm 32 now, and I slowly started like believing in things, and now I'm like all in. Um, but for so long, I was just like, uh, ghosts are clearly like, a psychological phenomena that people are for not realizing that, is not real, and like all this stuff. Like I would just, I was so just blatantly refusing to believe things, and to like now, especially with the perspective of like nonviolent communication that I care very much about, um, I realize how much of this kind of connection is about consent. And so if somebody is walking into a room and saying, I don't believe this, I don't believe this, that's like they have this block up. They're on some level, like a very deep level, they're saying, no, you do not have access to me. And so if that's the case, then you wouldn't in a lot of cases. Like, and there's like, I'm sure that there are some people that could force it, but like, why would you want to? Like that, isn't like good practice, I guess. And it probably isn't super pleasant for the person forcing it either. And so that's what it makes me think of. Like, I was literally like too scared of the concept. And like Rachel Bloom was like literally just like walking in, and I put these shutters down and refused to let anyone see. Pretty much because I didn't do shadow work. I was probably scared that ultimately there was something that if I let people looked into me, like wasn't gonna be very good for them to see. And then that would like confirm fears of mine and that kind of stuff. But yeah, like it feels like the comedy thing was right on point. And so, and then leading that to just consent and how these kind of exchanges work best when both people are actually willing to jump in the frequency or the channel with you with them. It just makes a lot of sense to me. Go ahead, Maria. I think Maria's next. Or is it
Yeah,
Rod Dogma?
I think I'm next. I think I know when the host gets sorted weirdly. Um, there's so many like side quests from this conversation that my brain kind of went into, but I wrote down just a few things. Um, First, I wanted to just say, Coral, you put something on the chat about like the HOA president thing, and I live in a condo community, so I thought and it won't be surprising someday if I am the president. So like I totally just resonate with that vibe, but also just wanted to say that yes, I can understand like that feeling of cringe with it, but also a lot of times I found there was a superpower like in there too, you know? And that, yeah, just wanted to say that for whatever reason. Um, so like the mediumship thing, the conversation I think, is interesting, and I think is one like mediumship and tarot cards, I think are one that have been like developed into more mainstream, and like people, even like super religious people tend to engage with mediumship and tarot, like they've somehow rationalized that in their belief system, which is great, but like just interesting. Um, but I had done like medium, ship like professionally, kind of more tarot, but m mediumship a little bit. I don't know if I ever did it really like paid, but kind would like do it more for people. And it's like because everything that we talked about of like how we uniquely engage with our external and internal like worlds and environments, it's just going to show up differently. And for people, like how you engage with that process, it's one reason why I stopped watching certain things on television and movies, because what people that maybe haven't engaged with that part, they have that reference of what's in maybe the media or what's on film, and that's a lot of times not how it looks. And so like for me, I don't watch scary horror movies because some people can watch it and like not be affected, but I am affected. But that affects how I interact with the spirit realm, and so I choose not to watch those movies. So just like that, sometimes people come with this idea, and I have had like been confronted with skeptics, and it's a great shadow work opportunity. Um, it just brings, I feel like being confronted by a skeptic brings up so many things, like especially if maybe it's like your parent or like a close person to you, because it brings up all the shadow work of like being validated, being understood, like wanting to be seen. So there's like that bucket of it, which I'm just going to leave for another conversation, but because that's like a whole, right? That's a whole thing, a whole conversation. And we're on a different track, so I'm going to try to stay in my own way. But it also like brings up too, like, well, those if someone is depending on how they're doing it, right? Because for me, it's like there's a level of wanting to get more information and be inquisitive, and I'm down to have those conversations. And then if you're gonna put me down, then you're not my people. And then we're just going to move on. And I feel like, because I ask myself, like, because I would say, well, then I would just move on from that person. And I asked myself, would you really? And like, would you not really be affected, Maria, if someone put you down? And I don't know, right? Like, I feel like that changes from moment to moment. Like I've done a lot of inner work throughout my life, and in the last 3 years, like really focusing on the shadow work. So yeah, I feel like are some instances where a skeptic might approach me, and I would just be like, not, I wouldn't care, and I would just move on and be like, that's cool, like have a nice day, and just go on, or maybe like fuck you, like I don't know, depending on your mood, right? And then just kind of go on. But how, like, would it affect me? And there might be some days where it might like affect me, but um and kind of digging into more of the shadow work of like why that bothered me. But overall, kind of wanted to say like this community is proof that like there are people that are going to get you, and that like sometimes, I don't know, they got like the message just now, like sometimes some conversations just aren't for everybody. And like I get that it does like pull on kind of the acceptance, like sometimes part of us, and that's valid. Just like recognizing that too. But like, yeah, there are just some conversations that I might only have within the bright and dark community, and that maybe when I feel up to a place, I might bring it out, to like other people. But this is always a nice place, like to have a sounding board, like as well. Um, yeah, this is such a great conversation. Oh, the last thing that I wanted to say was, I'm of the belief that you can also learn a new skill, which includes like this whole psychicness. I kind of lump it all, the telepathy, the spirit communication. When I say psychicness, I kind of putting that under that umbrella of that. Because I think there's I in my belief I believe that there's a way that your system can interact to do that thing that you're seeking, like which to do. It just might look different from how someone else is doing it. That pokes a little bit to at about like safety. Then there's a lot of talk about like protection and things like that, and that's also a whole other like conversation. So I'm just putting that out there, that recognizing that and your beliefs around connecting to the unseen. But I also believe that that like you can also practice and it becomes more of like a second nature type of an experience to you. Um, so I'm like, no, I know there's a lot of talk out there in witch talk and whatever about like, oh, like I have this Claire, I have that Claire. And I think that there are more ways in which we communicate in the unseen way, like whether that be telepathy to spirits to like intuition, guidance from guides, higher selves, angels, whatever your deities, however you do that. I do believe there are ways to like enhance that and like try new things. Um, and that like we might be kind of more comfortable with something, but I feel like there's ways, and if you do it more, if you engage with those parts of your brain more, you can kind of turn it. I describe it as like maybe a turning it on faster. Um, and I describe it as like a turning on because of what Ezra was talking about boundaries, because you also can have boundaries with all of these things because we are having a human experience and sometimes we have to do things that maybe require like concentration and focus and like your great grandma talking to you like is maybe now's not the time, like if you're at a work meeting or something. But um that's why I've kind of created this like turning it on. It doesn't mean I don't get messages or engage with that side of myself like throughout the day, but there are times where I intentionally want to do it, and then there are times where like I need to engage with other things. And um if you find that it is something that you need to kind of have more boundaries with. Anyways, Rotten Dogma, you had your hand up, and I'm passing it over to you if you still wanted to wait.
First, Maria, thank you for dropping an F-bomb because usually I'm the first one to do that in a conversation. So thank you for making me not feel alone in that. And I'm sorry, I don't remember who has said what at this point, but about feeling it in your body versus intellectually. I've been taught by my dad especially, to intellectualize things. You need data, you need proof. And if the person doesn't have the certificate on the wall, then they're not believable. This extends to my relationship with my dad and whether he believes me with what I'm saying or not. And I don't need that intellectual proof. I know it, certain things I've felt or seen or experienced. And it's okay that I feel it in my body. And that is to be believed, even though I can't write down a concrete reason for it. I don't have a data set to give. It's still real and it's still believable. And that's one of the things I've been, like you talk about a skill that you're building, is believing those things more and honoring that they are real. Movies. I don't really like watching movies very much because to me, it is such an emotional experience throughout the movie that then I'm just tired. And there's too much going on up here. And there's already so much going on up here that when I tell people I don't want to watch a movie, I get a lot of backlash of, why don't you like movies? And I can't explain to a neurotypical, my mom, that it's so all encompassing. And I just, my own day is filled with so much emotion and events that I don't want to add to it. Even if it is a good movie, a fun movie. Sometimes it's just too much. Okay, off to Chelsea.
Can you hear me? Still working out that headphone situation. I just was gonna chime in on you know, you said you can't watch movies. For me, it's like there's just certain things that suck up my bandwidth. So currently I'm in therapy, working on a lot of things, trying to release trauma from my body and my mind, because the more I get into it, I realize that they're two separate things really, and they've held on to trauma and certain things in their own way, and so I have to move through those things separately and honor them individually in order to fully unload my trauma, right? And so doing so, I've been really sensitive. I'm an empath. I definitely feel everything very deeply. And so I've had to set a lot of boundaries and work on building skills that kind of honor and protect that. Um, if sometimes it does mean, maybe hurting some feelings, but again, those who matter don't mind, and those who mind don't matter, right? So if I'm in the space or I'm just completely exhausted, I will put my foot down, just say no thanks. Like I don't have the time today or whatever. I've gotten really good about the boundaries and being okay with saying no and honoring where I'm at mentally, emotionally, physically, psychologically, all of it as a whole. But that's just what I wanted to share. Maria.
Thank you, Chelsea. Um, yeah, I totally get that, Ron Dogma. Like when I'm into a movie, I might as well be in it, in that land of like that movie or show that I'm watching, or sometimes an audiobook even too. And so I totally like resonate with that. And it was funny, like this morning I was thinking about something. I was thinking about this morning, and it was like the the reason why I don't watch like horror, like scary movies is because of that. Like, and then like lines were getting crossed when I was doing, um, then I was in fear of doing spirit communication because of something like I watched in a movie. Like I'm still afraid to swim in the ocean because of Jaws. That, I mean, and there are great white sharks here in Massachusetts, so that is like a real thing. But but I do still think of Jaws often. Like it just, and I watched that movie probably in the 80s or the 90s, right? Like early 90s. So like these things like do kind of leave right when there's science behind that, right? Like when your nervous system gets engaged, that heightened, and it like kind of right leaves like a memory, or someone else can explain that better than me, but that's science that kind of happens when we have like that, like a trauma reaction, or like our fight or flight gets engaged, in particular with like something that's scary. And it was funny because so again, like these is conversations happening in my brain, and I'm like, well, it's interesting, Maria, because you've like just me, I know that there are a wide vary of people having experiences with with the unseen, with spirits or deities or different entities. And so I'm only speaking from like my own experience, and I value and respect everyone else's experience. In my experience, I've never had anything in spirit communication, anything that I would consider scary. I've never had anything but like loves and supportive, maybe inquisitive, maybe trickster a bit in my recent times, maybe trickster, but not scary like or harmful like for me. Um, and the only scary harmful encounters that I've had have been with humans, like, and not with spirit. So I'm like, why, like, so then why watching a scary movie like affects me in that way, and maybe because of Rotten Dogma, what you said, it's because it's like it's like that I'm like part, like I might as well be in that realm of the world of that movie is presenting. So it's interesting to think that, but like because someone asked me recently, like about how to engage in like spirit communication, but feeling afraid. And when I started, like, so kind of like a doing it on purpose, like maybe like 1999, 2000, um, like with tarot cards and crystals and learn like at like going to like a class to learn how to do mediumship. I was afraid to see entities, and that's not like my primary mode. My primary mode is like hearing, like clairaudience and like visualizing and feeling, um, but I was afraid to see because I know I have really big startle like response. Like if you pop out in front of me, I'm gonna scream loudly, like it will, like it's just gonna happen. Um, but so it was like someone asked, how to engage, but they were also saying like they were afraid. And I've just been thinking about that a lot, like that conversation and just kind of like what, like being kind of witches and navigating this, like how you would kind of engage in that. And I feel like if there was fear associated with it, I feel like I might, want to pause on like what I was doing. And I say that because there's just a lot of we talk about capitalism and the patriarchy. And for those of you new in that space, like Jemery will say the cappy pappy. And sorry, I'm going a little left or right, wherever. I'm taking a little side quest. Um, the we talk a little about, like that world, but within the witchcraft community, within like the psychic community, there also is like shame, like, or hierarchy, and there's classes, so ableist, like there's all those things that happen too, right? And so I think like what a bright and dark, what we try is we do have our shadow work is our foundation of our magic, like approaching magic. And so that's why I think we kind of can have these spaces, but and there are a lot of other witches engaging in shadow work too, but not all witches. So the reason why it's I guess it's poking at me right now because somebody like might be listening to that, and just the fact of I don't know why I'm being called to say this, but it's like, oh well, I'm not good enough, or I'm not a witch if I can't do telepathy, or I can't like use these parts of me, or I can't do that. Then I just want to say that all of that is like not true. You can be a badass witch and like lean into maybe something you're looking to want to develop, but also I bet there's a whole bunch of awesome things that are already part of you. Um, and that like just deconstructing that comparison thing also can be real. So I don't, sorry, like I went on a side quest there, but that's where I went. So uh who's next? I just want to kind of call that part of it out and for like maybe the people listening to the replay. I often too like will say because like I thought teenage Maria thought that I'd get to a point in my practice that I would be so enlightened that I wouldn't have anxiety anymore. And now I still have anxiety and feel like a badass witch and feel like I've shifted timelines and learned a bunch of awesome things, and that I have done all this work too. But it wasn't like one or the other. It was like it was all of the things that were going to happen. And thanks, Chelsea. Over to you.
Sorry, it was on a side note there. I lost my focus. Go ahead, Stephanie. I need to regroup my thoughts.
That happens here pretty often with a lot of us are like, oh, train derailed. We'll come back to it. But yeah, a lot of this really resonates with me with the movies and stuff. And also I can group in my um semi-extreme religious upbringing and into making me afraid of not only working, with the unseen, but of witchcraft in general. And deconstructing all of that has, I mean, instantly made me realize, and that didn't happen until Bright and Dark, that like all of the experiences that I had actually experienced with witchcraft or entities or the unseen were never scary. Like you said, Maria, like never. I mean, shenanigans, yes, absolutely, but not, I was never scared. And I had always said, um, you know, if I watch a scary movie, I'll be up all night long or hear something scary. It's the idea of it that is scary, but every time that anything has actually been an actual experience, it has never been scary for me. And when I was able to just see that, those two different pieces, like what is the conditioning from movies and religion and stories, and what is my true experience, then I was able to lean into that more. But I had to do that deconstruction work because, you know, I, in hindsight, have been really a practicing witch like my entire life. But um, I had been made afraid of developing it, you know, because of all the scary things that were going to happen to me. Well, they haven't happened yet. I'm still waiting for that. Um, and Maria, to your point about how not everybody is going to have the same strengths and talents, if you will, or experiences as a witch. I think that's important to know, and it's fantastic, right? Like, how boring would it be if we could all just do the same things? Like, right? Like, so boring. And like we're finding in this community, which is more of, you know, non-hierarchical thing where everybody's different talents really come into play and into importance of how it operates and how we support each other as a community. So I really love that you said that, and just wanted to say that. Chelsea, your hand's back up. Did you find?
Yes, I have gathered my thoughts. I was just a couple things. Scary movies definitely rattle me. I have to have some wind down time after one, and I have a strict no watching of scary movies throughout the year. Only the month of October do I honor scary movies. My husband knows that. It's just the thing. I let him know to take note of what he wants to watch, and I'll keep a note of the ones I want to watch. And then we watch them the month of October, and that's it. I don't really like to watch them any other time. Um, but back to, you know, kind of the space and not feeling like I'm a witch if I don't do this or that. It's kind of why I joined this group, was because I've been really struggling with just finding my way and figuring out what being a witch means for me, and feeling like, well, if I don't do all these things, then I couldn't possibly be witchy enough. And some of that's just deep rooted in trauma and not feeling good enough, which is a whole sidebar and why I'm in therapy. But coming here to connect is, I'm hoping, is going to help those feelings, and it be kind of liberating, because isn't that kind of the joy of some of these, you know, unorganized religious feelings where, you know, you don't have to be this or that. This is kind of the freedom of being, you know, a witch, and doing what feels good for you. At least that's what it is for me. So yeah, I don't know. It's just, I'm hoping to get a little more confident in my beliefs coming here and joining this group. Go ahead, whoever else.
Thank you, Chelsea. Um, I think I just wanted to say that what you said, I think I resonate with, and I think I know like other people just resonate, you know, with too. So you're not alone in that. I know I know some people like watch scary movies and it's comical to them, and I'm a little envious of like that. I almost wish I could do that, but I know I can't. Renee.
I'll tell you guys the secret to watching a scary movie. If you watch it with the sound off, it won't be scary. Like even like the most gory scenes, like if there's no sound effects, like you will laugh at it. But I mean, I watch every single scary movie, so um, and I know Ezra and I talk about movies all the time, but yeah, I'm a big scary movie fan, but I'm also um like I don't know, it's really funny. My husband, now that he knows about witches, like he'll be watching a movie and then he'll look at me and then he'll look at the screen and look at me and he'll be like, "That's not right." I'm like, "That's right, baby. That's not right."
Yeah, I was when we did a a like a gathering in Salem, I don't know, 2 years ago or something, and we'll try to do another one again. Um, but I was walking around with it was Jemarie's sister came and she's not a witch, but she was just like she just looked at me, she's like, "Is this weird for you?" You know, like when you like listening to other people like talk about witches and stuff as a witch. And I was like, no one had really ever asked me that before. And yeah. But it is like interesting. Yes, I just think I don't know. It's highlighted like how big the media plays in in informing to like other people. And then so we're almost like backtracking and being like, actually, that's not really how it is, you know? And to acknowledge that like if you have religious conditioning and like like people in your life that were important to you as a child and influential, like told you were going to hell to do something, that's scary. That is really scary. And so it's, you know, that's like where you're starting from and kind of deconstructing that. And I honestly think that I want to say, so I'm going to be 44 in March. I think that it's only within the last couple of years that I can say that I'm not afraid of that anymore. Truly, where there's no more maybe like I'm not like and so as I talk, I'm always like, are you feeling, is that true? Are you feeling into that? Are there any lingering things? Um, you know, and I want to say like I probably it probably feels just within the last couple of years where I feel confident in my beliefs of what I believe. It's a mesh, it's a mesh of things. You know, I don't follow like one tradition. And it's interesting because my body does play a big part of that because I say when something's true for me, I can feel it in my bones. I don't know if I can like describe that, but it is like this knowing. And when I get that feeling, it's a feeling signature and it doesn't happen like a lot, but it like happens where I get the feeling and for me, I know that it's true. And it can't like it's so true that you can't undispute it for me. However, like I'm open to discussion. I love talking about things. But like for me, I know that that's now been incorporated in my belief system. And I want yeah, just saying like I feel like really it's only been the last couple of years where I really fully like lean into what my beliefs are about like what happens when we die. And there's also a bit of I know I won't have all of the answers. I do believe when I came here to Earth that I agreed to like the veil of forgetting. I think that's on purpose so that I could have these experiences here. I feel like if I had maybe different information that I've maybe sought in the past, that maybe it would change my experience. But I just kind of because I also been deconstructing my relationship with control. That's a hard one for me. It's really hard. And but it was part of that process, right? Because it's like I'm so much more of a go with the flow person now that than I could have ever imagined in my wildest dreams. Um but that was like there's just a lot of things that encompassed that safety like was part of that process. So I don't know. I want to share that. Ray, over to you.
Yeah. So I was gonna say regarding like when you know something's true, when you know something's like very certain. I get that too. It's how I know I'm like going with my aligned, my aligned path is I feel it at the back of the neck. It's a very certain kind of, it's not quite a tingle, it's not quite an ache, but it's just a very certain specific feeling at the back of the neck. And I was describing that to somebody, and they were talking about how um, it was some sort of, I think it was like Native American or something, like some sort of shaman that was a prominent thing that uh, that's where like their like magic was centered at, was like at the back of the neck. I can't remember the whole thing she said, but she just she was like, yeah, so like so that's, yeah, that's definitely something that's, rooted there, like um but it's something I've always, even when like I wasn't acknowledging my power, it was always something I knew was there, and I knew it was something that was different than any other feelings. But yeah, so that was just a little tidbit. And like I don't know if anyone else has certain just little things like that that they have always, felt or noticed. Or another thing I have is my hands. Like when I'm feeling really like high emotion, like usually it's like when I'm really sad or really angry, um, my hands start to ache, like a really deep ache. And like I've described it to my husband as like I feel like I just want to shoot fireballs out of them. Like even though that's like not something I could actually do, but like at least in the physical realm, but like that's just the feeling. It feels like I just gotta like like cast fireball out of people, not at people, but just out, because there's so much in my hands. Like, so that's it. Renee?
Yeah, I would say like the old expression, like when you feel something in your bones, like I know that feeling too, like when you just can feel, like you can actually feel your bones. It's very weird. It's like an arthritic ache in your bones. When there's about to be a thunderstorm, my kneecaps fizz. Like that's the only way I can describe it. They feel fizzy. Uh but I was gonna say, if I'm in a haunted place, and it's like an unfamiliar haunted place, my nose and my eyes will just start running uncontrollably. That's one of like the indications to me something's going on. Ooh, I'm getting all weird right now. But then also I was gonna say, I I've noticed this thing, I call it the owl eyes. When my sister and I were younger, we used to do the Zener cards, those, the wavy line and the star and all that stuff. And we could get just crazy accurate with one another, guessing correctly. But whenever, and I've looked in the mirror too when I do magic, like my pupil just gets huge, like it'll like take up my whole entire, like uh you know eyeball basically, and I call it owl eyes. And I just be curious if anybody else, like when you're doing like magic, sometime look in the mirror and tell me if you get owl eyes. But I know too, that's like when you're like in love or when you're like attracted to someone, I know your pupil dilates too. And I've always wondered if there's some sort of uh relation to that, you know what I mean? Like, anyway, that's some of my like physical reactions to things. But yes, and I mentioned like when I get a migraine, the first indication that it's going to happen is my whole neck stiffens up and feels like there's rebar in it. And I think someone else had mentioned this here too. Like sometimes when you have migraines, you have really bizarre experiences that feel like supernatural because they're so foreign, and it's happening like while you're in pain and it's not a good time. Like big auras, your eyes do weird stuff. Mine focus in two different places. So it's a strange thing. And I bet a lot of us have a lot to say on that subject. I know there's like a lot of chronic illness here, but yeah, migraines are a weird thing. And especially since no one really knows like where they come from or why they happen or what causes them. Um and I had one yesterday, so I'm all pooped out today. But anyway, does anybody else want to put their hand up? I'm gonna hop off.
Thanks, Renee. I think your dog was weighing in too, which was nice.
Oh, he's playing the game of bones right now. Yep. He's guarding something.
I think that like what you said, we've had discussions and there's lots of talk about how we have when we experience these things and have these conversations and how it relates to like talking, like how we engage with like the medical community, and it's like, talking to your doctor about having migraines. And I know there are probably some doctors out there, so I'm not going to say all, but you say, well, I think it might be part of like, my connection to, talking with spirits. I mean, y'all know how that conversation's going to go. Oh, that's awesome, Stephanie. Said that their provider is a witch. Um, and I think that I I work, I'm a nurse and a witch, and so I have interesting conversations with my like doctor sometimes, but it's like I just kind of take it all in, right? Like I will listen to their like perspective about what's going on with me, and I'm down with Western medicine, also down with Eastern medicine and like lots of other things. And so it's like, yeah, it's just interesting. I'm just kind of putting that out there that that's what it pinged for me is like having these experiences and then sometimes they get explained, by maybe something like medical and maybe it is. Um, but when we engage with the way that we do, there's just like other stuff going on too. I'm kind of like leaving it open because I feel like it's that's such like a personal journey for everybody and feeling into, like I know that there's just a lot of talk out there about different witches, feeling like, oh, I don't take medications because of this or that. And I feel like everyone needs to do what they feel, is right for them. Um, and I guess that's part of like too, like this things I was talking about of like how you're supposed to be a witch, you know? Um, I think if you take like medication and it helps you, then that's a wonderful and amazing thing that you found something that, that can help you. Um, and that the most important thing is like that you have providers that you can have a conversation with at least, and that, um, yeah, that you feel like you can work with. And I know that that's not like always the case in different parts of the world. It's hard sometimes to do that. But that it just brought up that, like, oh, like, you know, I have this neck pain, and that's like my sync for like this is gonna happen, and explaining that sometimes is interesting. But Stephanie, I love that you have that experience. I don't know if you want to sh share any more.
Yeah, I'll share I love her so much. I'll share just a little bit about her because I had been following this she's a nurse practitioner, which I'm more than happy, to have as a provider. For years I've just chosen nurse practitioners. But I was following this group on Facebook, the Syracuse where I live herbal study group, and it was run by this certified herbalist. Um, and I'd wanted to go to the meetings forever, but had never been able to. So I had a couple of clients telling me about this nurse practitioner that they go to that they loved and loved and loved, and she was more into the herbalism thing, and nutrition end of things. And I was like, this sounds like somebody I want to be with. So I made an appointment with her. It was a very long wait for the appointment, but then I started going to these herbalist meetings. And it's her. She I'd been following her for years and didn't even realize that I had already just made an appointment with this woman until I went. She does these plant walks where she'll take you out to different places around the area and help you identify useful plants in nature and stuff like that. So yeah, she's been fantastic. I mean, I I see her socially now, like, and we actually did a little shadow work at our first appointment together because we got around to talking about how I've been sober for like 6 years, um and she actually was more newly sober and had a question about something, and I was able to say to her, "Oh, well, once I deconstructed this, and that, like part of the shadow work," and she was like, "That's it, that's it." Like there was no like, "All right, weirdo." Like I wouldn't have been able to say that to anybody who wasn't like that. So I feel very blessed to have found her and to be able to get in with her because it was like a 6 month wait when I signed up. And now I've got my daughter on the waiting list for when she turns 18. And it's like a year and a half wait because it's really something people want. And she's very open, like, well, pretty open. She refers to it, that she was trained up in the wise women tradition. But on her Instagram, she full out says I'm a green witch. So she doesn't hide that piece, which is awesome and brave in that. But she literally works in an office that's through like our big medical complex here. So, everybody can just go and use insurance and you can add in the herbalism part if you want, which I have, which is life changing. But yeah, I've been very, very lucky. I hope that that's a trend, Maria, you're in the field, so that's two that I know of. So hopefully that's something that we can continue to find and support, but it's in demand, like really in demand. She's very in demand.
That's just so awesome. That's a dream. Someone said, sounds magical. Yeah, it's a dream, but it's a reality because you're experiencing it, which means it's possible for all of us. But I know it's hard to come by, and it's just nice that it's like you felt that that shift was coming within the medical community, but you're like living it. And so that's like a realization of that. And that's, I just think, really awesome. Yeah, just someone that like, right, she's got the education and background and like all of the things and melds them all together in a way to support her patients. I think that's amazing. Tell her she should like go train some more nurse practitioners and
She's going to have to, like her demand is so high, to be able
right.
to get in with her as a new patient, and she's still doing all these other things outside of that, like the herbalism education in the community. She works a lot with the native community here, as far as, like the education in the plant and the herbalism stuff. And she's starting a new online support group for I can never say it right, Ellers Dan, you know what I mean? Um, because she feels like the they've been really gaslit by the medical community. So she's starting like a support group. I'm like, I don't know how she's gonna do all of this. So she better start training others. That's a really good idea. Maybe I will mention that to her. Like, be like, are you raising up any others? Because we're gonna like it's everybody I know who goes to her has loved that part of it and has changed the medical game. And most of us go to her after years of being let down as I was, and spending years in pain that literally was fixed with a vitamin, like that she figured out in the first appointment. And I'd been told, well, you're just getting old. You're just, now you're 50 and you're a woman and this is how it is. And it's like, no, I needed a vitamin. Like that's all I needed. So, and everybody I know that has gone to her has had that same experience where they were really let down by the wider medical community. So, hopefully that is a trend, and hopefully that's something that's recognized maybe where she works and they can continue to build on that. Hopefully I'm not convinced, but that would be nice.
Thank you for sharing. Just giving everyone a 15-minute heads up. We have 15 minutes left in our SASS today. We can change the topic if anyone else wanted to share, or anyone was just excited to share something that happened and wanted support in that way. Stephanie?
I'm going to do a little zig here, but because we were having a conversation in the chat, and it turns out there's more of us now, the descendants of Salem, which I find really interesting. Which I love being a descendant of Salem because it allows me to, like at work, I have brooms all over the place. And so I can kind of judge if I'm not feeling safe with somebody, I could just be like, oh, it's my, heritage or whatever. So that's a nice little escape hatch for me. But I wanted to share, there's a book, and I usually read it like once a year. Who wrote it? It's called The Heretic's Daughter. I'll look it up right now, but it was written by another descendant of my 13th great grandmother, who was Martha Carrier. Who wrote it? I'll find it and put it in the chat. But I guess I had a question. If anybody has been into those sorts of things, if they have any book recommendations, can you put them in the chat for me? Because I love to learn more about that. So, you got one, Maria? I'll pass it off to you.
So I don't have a book recommendation, but I am just going to say this. I recently went with my cousin to the Boston Public Library, and you can use Ancestry for free, and they have other sites. So if you ever do come to Boston, we can go to the library and we can like actually find the documents and stuff. That's very interesting to me. And so too, I wonder, I can, next time I go, I can try to find out like what specifically the library has maybe for Salem too. Just throwing that out there. And I feel like there was a book that someone recommended in a web on Facebook, so I'll have to see. I follow I'm on a Facebook group. It's like things to do in Salem. And it's obviously real pops off in the October months, but I feel like there are people that come to that group and say, I'm a descendant, like how do I get more information? And there has been posts where people in Salem have commented, so I will try to see what I can find. Go back there and look. Stephanie.
There is a Facebook group. I got the invite, I think, when I went to the museum, the Salem Museum. They have these little envelopes, and on the front it just says, for the descendant of so and so, or for the descendant of so and so, and you don't know what's in it. It's like $10 or something. So I got it, and it had some transcripts from the court stuff and some things that I hadn't had and hadn't known about her in particular. But there is a whole Facebook group that the museum itself su- supports for descendants from the area, from the witch hunts. So that might be a different one, or I wonder if it's related to the one you're talking about.
It could be, but I'll see if I can find anything else in that group. It's mostly people like, what restaurant is the best, or what, it's a lot of like those questions, but
It's that
I
pizza
think,
place that's so good. What's that oven fired pizza place that's so darn good? I go every time and I can never remember the name, but I always end up there magically. So
yeah, I love it there. So Salem is wonderful. Salem is also very commercial too. Like there's that part of it. There definitely are practicing witches in Salem. There's a lot of psychics like offering readings and different things like that. It is like during October, it's bananas. There's so many people. I didn't go this year because it's very crowded. But Salem, at all times of year, is a beautiful place to visit. It just in Salem in October they have like the fair where the vendors kind of set up. But there are tours and things. But Salem is a rich in history. It's a beautiful town. It's on the ocean. Um, and yeah, like I'm always down to go to Salem, so just like just hit me up and I'll meet you there for the day. Really, like you can do a lot in a day, but if you spend a couple, just even a few days, like you can do a lot. If you're interested in the actual witch trials, um, visiting the sites where the trials happened, where things did happen. It does extend to some of the other towns, like outside of Salem, north of Boston, that some people choose to like go on those sort of and see those sites too, which aren't like necessarily the most popular. Um, Anyhow, that's my 2 cents about Salem. I love going there. I love the vibe. Um, yes, Carrie.
Um, I have a change of topic, which was just to ask if people had resources on raising witches. Because my kid is like super into this group
Okay.
and I want to support him.
Such a great question. It's been asked before. Um, Jen Marie had done like a parenting workshop, and we can ask Jen Marie if they would be interested in doing it again. Um, there, yeah, there have been a lot of witches throughout the 3+ years of Bright and Dark that have asked that same question, Carrie. Um, I'm not aware of any like specific resources. I What I do know just from the conversations is that by you engaging in this process, especially with this shadow work practice, that like the ripple effect of that has just makes like a difference and um, is just amazing. We can definitely kind of see how we can maybe engage in more specific conversations about that because it's something that gets asked a lot.
Awesome.
Stephanie.
Thank you.
Yeah, Stephanie.
I just want to back that up, Maria, 100%. That's been my experience with my daughter. Like, even this morning, she was being rude to me about something completely unrelated. And then she was like, oh, wait, I think this is really about, and then literally just naturally goes into the shadow work of the whole thing, right? We don't call it that yet, or things like that. But just by doing the work myself, learning how to communicate better, like with the nonviolent communication, and all the deconstructing that I've been doing has radiated out throughout my family and even at work and my friends. So yeah, Maria, you're 100% on when you say that is like I have found the biggest effect. But Carrie, I love that question because now that I'm seeing how effectively it changes everything and everybody around me, the shadow work that I personally do, um, I would like to learn more about that myself. So yeah, hopefully maybe Mary, maybe Jemery will do another workshop at some point. I didn't get to go to that one before, but it sounds really good. Maria, you're muted, I think. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Renee says there are pagan children's books. Um, nice. Did you hear me about the TikTok? Pennsylvania? No. Okay. Um, I was saying, there was someone in the chat was talking about the witch shop, and I don't know if it's the same, but I do follow a witch that has a shop in Pennsylvania, and that's been her journey. Like she was getting harassed by the police and stuff like that. I said I forget their handle on TikTok, but I'm sure if you're on TikTok and you like do a search, you would find it. But you can ask me in the chat if you can't find it in the on the app. Let me see if I can find it. Now, is that the same person? That you were that you were thinking of in the chat? Is it the witch in Pennsylvania that has a
I'm not
shop, or
sure
is it
where
different?
I'm not sure where she's located. I can't remember for the life of me, and I'm trying to look it up now, but I'm not finding it. But yeah, she owns a crystal shop in this little town somewhere, and like I think he might even be like a sheriff, but he's like real religious and stuff, and they've been really harassing her spirit, like really like intimidation type harassment, and trying to put her out of business and stuff. I don't know if she considers herself a witch or not. I just know that she has like a crystal metaphysical type shop.
Okay, so I don't know if this is the same one, but oh, that's a stitch. Who's Beck Lawrence, a tarot shop owner in Hanover. I think it's Pennsylvania. Yeah, Hanover, Pennsylvania. But yeah, they're on TikTok. I've been following them, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's probably others too. That's just one that I remember. They call it, like, if you search the Hanover witch hunt, I think that's you would find the TikToks. I'm doing that now too. Yeah, if you search that, you'll see a bunch of them pop up, and you can see if it's the same one or not. But that was one that was interesting. I know that they like moved locations within the same area, but they did open their shop last I watched.
Yeah, I just saw a picture. I think that's her. It looks like the same person I'm talking about.
Renee.
Just an FYI, if you get your minister's license from the Universal Life Church, then you can't be prosecuted for fortune telling because you're a spiritual advisor. Like in the places where they say like tarot card reading and stuff, like some of those small town, like I know the place Taryn's talking about because I saw a news story on it too. And there is like a sheriff, like they're trying to run this woman out of town basically that has like a metaphysical shop. But Yeah, there's always like little workarounds too. Like if they want to throw like legal stuff at you, that's one of my little passions, is finding the loopholes of how to beat them at their own game.
Taryn.
Yeah, I was just gonna go off of what Renee just said. I look up stuff all the time and then I find answers, but I don't save it or I don't write it down. But what I found actually in scripture, if you search for divination, you should be able to find it. But the scripture actually says that if you're calling on the power of God, like through Christ or that sort of thing, then divination is okay. It's just if you call on other entities or whatever, other gods, that it's not allowed. So, yeah, just tell everybody you're a Christian witch and you'll be fine. Well, they may not know you'll be able to find, but you'll be able to back it up with scripture.
Thank you, Taryn. It was a great SASS today. We are all up in the app space too. So if you feel like there was something that you wanted to share, you can always post it in the courtyard space. And until next time, thanks everyone for coming today. See you later. Have a great day.